In Bihar, there is a veritable political war on between the opposition and the Election Commission over the contentious decision by the EC to revise the voter rolls. The opposition alleges that this is an attempt at what they call manipulation. The case is now in the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court had in fact urged the Election Commission to recognize the Aadhaar, the voter card, the ration card, among others, as a proof, a legitimate proof to be able to participate in elections. But the Election Commission, in its counter affidavit before the Supreme Court, has disagreed. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be talking in a moment from now to Yogendra Yadav, a key opposition voice, but also one of the petitioners in the Supreme Court against the Election Commission's decision to revise voter rolls. Every day in Parliament, we have seen images like the one you see on your screen. Rahul Gandhi today has gone one step further, saying the Election Commission of India is not behaving like the Election Commission. To quote him exactly, he has said, "This is nonsense." Opposition leaders accused the Election Commission of not providing a level playing field with their decision to revise voter rolls in Bihar and not accept Aadhaar, ration cards, voter ID cards as standalone proofs of voter registration. In its last hearing, the Supreme Court had in fact urged the Election Commission in a brief order to keep in mind, quote unquote, the interest of justice and accept all of these forms of identification as proof that enables somebody to take part in the election. There's also a raging debate over whether it is within the jurisdiction of the Election Commission to decide somebody's citizenship. The Election Commission has argued that 52 lakh people have been, quote unquote, weeded out from the rolls. They say many of these had migrated, were reported dead, or were enrolled in more than one constituency. But the opposition now is talking about even considering boycotting the polls. Tejashwi Yadav has indicated that that is on the table for discussion. Joining us now is our newsmaker today. Yogendra Yadav is with us. As I mentioned that, we have seen Yogendra ji as a key opposition voice, but he's also one of the petitioners against this order in the Supreme Court. If we can please bring him on the screen now. There he is. Yogendra ji, namaskar. And thank you so much for talking to us. You obviously have very, very strong opinions on what is unfolding in Bihar. And one of the points that you have made, both in your Indian Express column and in your other writings and interviews, is that ye Bihar ki kahani nahi hai akele. This is not only about Bihar. This is about the right to vote. It is about that fundamental sort of right that comes with a democracy, the right to vote. And you argue that if it is accepted in Bihar, it's only a matter of time before it's applied to other places. Before I come to the Election Commission's counter, let me hear your key concerns, because obviously the EC quite simply is arguing that we're only trying to ensure that legitimate people, people who have right to vote in a certain place vote. We're only trying to clean up the democratic process. That would be their argument. You would say what?
Thanks, Barkha. So let's start with an elementary clarification, because I feel that after nearly 1 month of shouting on this question, I've not been able to convey this very elementary thing to a large number of people. And your program is a good opportunity, once again, to try. Ordinarily, all people believe that the commonest impression is, all right, there was some problem in Bihar's voter list. Election Commission has used a slightly unusual method to clean it up thoroughly. And the simple question is, all right, what's wrong with that? Why are you opposing it? Are you for unclean electoral lists? Do you want all kinds of wrong names to be in the voters list? That's a common impression that anyone has, and which unfortunately our media has fostered. So let me begin with elementary clarifications. Number one, this is not about Bihar. And this, Barkha, is not my personal opinion. This is written by the Election Commission in its order and repeated everywhere. So the election, and as you know, the Indian Express story has said, Election Commission has already issued instructions throughout the country that in Bihar, it's being tried out. And now for Bihar, the cutoff date was 1st of July. For the rest of the country, the cutoff date will be 1st of January. And in the order of the Election Commission for Bihar, it clearly says it will apply to the entire country. Bihar happens to be the first state, number one. So it's not a question of opinion. Number two, it is not a revision. It's a very, very misleading word. Revision means you have a given list, You say, all right, I go house to house, I check whether you are there, you are not there, I delete the wrong names, I put the new names which need to be there, etc. That's called revision. It is not a revision. It is de novo rewriting of the electoral rolls. Once again, Barkha, this is not my interpretation. From what I can see and reported in the news media, election commissions officially in the affidavit uses the word de novo exercise. So basically, it would mean that the existing electoral rolls will be junked and fresh electoral rolls will be written. So that's the second confusion that people have. The third very common impression people have is that, all right, election commission is using a somewhat unusual instrument, which it had used some 20 years ago, to do a very thorough cleaning up of the electoral rolls. This is completely false, because what the election commission is doing is unprecedented. It is not about revising the voters list of in one state or in the country. Election commission is rewriting the rules of what it means to be a voter in India. It is a tectonic shift in the architecture of universal adult franchise in India. And this is in two specific ways. India has always followed a system where it is the responsibility of the state to enroll, unlike the American system, where it is my responsibility to go and register myself. For the first time in the history of Indian Republic, the onus has been shifted to the voter. Go fill a form. If you don't fill a form, thank you very much, you don't exist on the voters list. This has never happened. This goes against our law. This goes against Supreme Court judgments. This goes against the spirit of democracy in a country where documents are very hard to obtain. And the second big shift, Barkha, is this, that for the first time, the presumption of citizenship is being overturned on its head. So far, if I went to Barkha Dutt's place, she happens to live in Delhi, I would presume that you are an Indian citizen unless I have an information on you which indicates otherwise, in which case I'll ask you for certificates and I can make inquiries. Now, the presumption is that I meet Barkha Dutt and I don't know which country she is from. So the onus is now on Barkha Dutt to prove that she is a citizen with the help of documents and certificates. In a country where we know that nearly half the people do not possess the documents that the election commission expects people to have. People have no reason to have those documents. It's not that they have failed to obtain documents. Please remember, Barkha, there is no failure on the part of ordinary people who have not done matriculation. They have no reason to possess any of the 11 documents that the election commission is asking them to. So I invite you to my building, and the guard asks you for a certificate, for a document, and I know in advance that Barkha doesn't have that document. What does it mean? It means that I don't want you to enter the building. That, unfortunately, is exactly what the election commission is doing. And the final point, Barkha, is it is not merely about these two big changes. There's also a complete U-turn in practices. So far, the focus of election commission in this country has been to say, we are not home ministry. Finding foreigners is not my job. Finding problems is not my job. My job is inclusion. So there has been a logic of encompassment. Election commission has been saying 98.98% is not enough. Find out the remaining 0.2%. Find out those who reside on the streets. Find out those who sleep only in temples. Find out sex workers. Find out every other section of population. Go and contact NRIs and somehow see if they want to vote. That has been the practice. No one to be left behind. That practice is now, there's a U-turn. For the first time, election commission is saying how many of, so it's like a government scheme. Tell me, why should you get it? Do you have valid reasons to get it? This is not the practice of election commission, the logic of inclusion. The citizenship has now been used to make it a document of exclusion.
Before we examine what happened in the Supreme Court and what may happen next, just to read out the Election Commission's couple of arguments and couple of data points provided by them. Now, the Election Commission uses this number 52 lakh voters, and it says that we have weeded out 52 lakh voters, and it further breaks this down, and it says 18 lakh were reported dead, 26 lakhs have shifted, and 7 lakhs were enrolled in two places. And they put forth numbers like this to make the argument that look, those who are dead should not be on the voter list, those who are double enrolled should not be on the voter list, and those who have migrated should not be on the voter list. How do you respond to this number put forth by the EC?
The idea that those who are dead, who have permanently shifted away, those who have duplicate vote, should not be on the voters list is a perfectly legitimate idea. Not only is it legitimate, it is the responsibility of Election Commission to ensure that all these things are done. This is what cleaning of electoral rolls is all about. All I would say is two things. Number one, didn't the Election Commission do exactly that in the month of December and January? What was the Election Commission doing? Please remember, in the month of January, Election Commission, after an extensive exercise of 3 months, has issued a voters list of Bihar, which according to it was cleaned up. So, did you not do your job properly? This is what summary revision should have been all about. Number two, all right, you feel maybe we failed and you don't want to apologize, but you do know that some mistakes were committed. You want to clean it up further. Just order a house-to-house enumeration. That's all you need to do. You don't need to overturn the practices of 75 years. All the Election Commission needed to do, and they have every power in law, they would have simply ordered another summary exercise. They could have simply said to all the BLOs of Bihar, who they have summoned and ordered, take this list, go to every single household, check and report if people are dead, if they are duplicate is difficult to find out, because this is house to house is not a method to correct duplicacy. But they could have easily said, find out people who are permanently away, check it, come back, report. You don't have to ask 8 crore people to fill forms for that. You do not have to ask 8 crore people to produce documents. You do not have to harass people for whom getting a document is losing 1 or 2 days of hard-earned labor. We had this Jan Sunwai in Patna 2 days ago, where a woman said, I was required to do this, and I was told if I don't do it, I would lose all the benefits that I'm getting. So the only thing I could do was to sell my rice, the Russian rice that she had at home. She sold it, went to the nearby town, got a photograph for herself, applied for, got photocopies, and so on. And in the process, also lost 2 days of dihadi. You don't need to do all this utter nonsense just for this. There are ample powers available to Election Commission. There are ample procedures available to Election Commission. Why did you not exercise? So I have a sudden catch in my throat. And instead of saying go and gargle, you say have tonsillitis operation this minute. Would you not turn around and say, Doctor Saab, और कोई रास्ता नहीं है क्या? अभी एकदम करवा लें. That's exactly what the Election Commission is doing.
In the Supreme Court, in which you are also one of the petitioners, the Supreme Court, in fact, quite clearly said to the EC that in the interest of justice, whether it's the Aadhaar, whether it's the ration card, whether it's the voter ID card, please do accept this as proof. The EC counter affidavit, and this has not been heard by the Supreme Court yet, it should be clarified, it's only been submitted. The EC counter affidavit does not accept these identity mechanisms as standalone proofs of identity. How do you react to what the Election Commission affidavit says?
I should begin by clarifying that the Supreme Court actually had said 3 things. The media has been very, very partisan and very weird in reporting. I mean, even Barkha, what the Supreme Court says about the EC is reported based on instructions from the BJP. That's the whole problem about it. Supreme Court had said 3 things in the court. Number 1, they had asked questions about the scope of power of the Election Commission. Justice Dhulia in open court had clearly said, Judging, deciding citizenship is none of your business. You are not Home Ministry. Don't do that. Number two,
They
the Supreme
question the
Court had
timing. They
the
question the
question the
timing.
entire scheduling, timing, timeline, and Justice
Yeah.
Bakshi said this looks like an impossible proposition. How would you do that? And why don't you detach this from elections? What is the need of doing it 4 months before elections? Detach it, do it over 1 year, and then do it in the rest of the country. And the third question they had asked was about Aadhaar and other documents. They had clearly said that if your purpose is to uh, include people, if your purpose is to give them all possible opportunities, then why don't you allow Aadhaar? Because, in fact, the judges had argued and shown that in your own statute books, in the in the rules of registration of voter, Aadhaar has been specifically mentioned by an amendment that was made in 2022. So you make an amendment, you include this, and now you're saying you will not consider it. So there was a long argument. The court was almost going to say you must include it, but then the court, in its grace, in its usual manner, said, all right, we should make it as a suggestion. But a suggestion coming from Supreme Court is not a light suggestion. What is the argument of the Election Commission as reported in the media from the affidavit? So they are saying Aadhaar by itself is not a proof of citizenship. That is an absolutely correct statement. But tell me, Barkha, is matriculation certificate a proof of citizenship? You could come from England, have a matric in India, have a matriculation certificate. Do you become Indian citizen? Is Avas Pramana Patra a certificate of citizen of this country? Of the 11 documents the Election Commission lists, only one of them, which applies to Bihar, is a certificate of citizenship, namely the passport. Nothing else is a certificate of citizenship. So if everything else is accepted, why not Aadhaar? And how
So
do you get Awas Pramana Patra in Bihar?
I have a
You get
question.
Awas Pramana Patra by showing Aadhaar card. So I can show Aadhaar card, I can get Awas Praman Patra, that's valid, but Aadhaar is not valid. What kind of a strange logic is that?
I have a question. Other lawyers in this case, I interviewed Vrinda Grover, for example. She said that personally she did not want to make Aadhaar the centerpiece of this conversation because A, she had other issues or disagreements in the past with Aadhaar or the Aadhaar scheme, but B, everybody agrees, as you just did, that that non-citizens can also have Aadhaar cards. I think that's
No,
probably
it should go
correct.
on. Yeah.
Okay, it is my understanding that one, people below 18 have Aadhaar cards, so Aadhaar doesn't necessarily equal the necessary documentation to vote. B, I'm not sure about this, but I've been told that you can, under certain circumstances, have Aadhaar cards even if you're not a citizen. You don't agree? You think I've got this wrong? I'm also not fully sure, but I think that is the case. The point I'm trying to ask is something else. If we agree that Aadhaar does not equal citizenship, right? If we agree that Aadhaar does not equal citizenship necessarily, that's the correct word. I should actually add to that. And we agree that only citizens should vote. What would be the fair answer to anybody's concerns about Farzi voting? That's my only question.
So, Barkha, you are absolutely right. In fact, Aadhaar card says it. It's written on Aadhaar card that it is not necessarily a proof of citizenship. It is
Yeah.
written in the law on Aadhaar card. So obviously there cannot be an argument on that. But as I submitted to you, Barkha, the same applies to 10 other documents that the Election Commission accepts.
Yeah.
So apart from passport, and there's another thing that doesn't apply to Bihar, which is National Register of Citizenship. These two things are proofs of citizenship. The remaining 9 documents are not. And in this case,
Yes.
National
Yes.
Register of Citizenship does not apply to Bihar. So that's irrelevant. Now, my question is not what is sufficient. I'll just come to answer the question. But my simple question is, what is it that makes Aadhaar less reliable than documents which are so very easy to get? I mean, Election Commission says Parivar, family register. These are things which are developed with much less care than the election rolls itself. How does that become important? So the question is, on what basis are you saying that the one document which every Indian seems to possess is not acceptable, but all kinds of other documents which are not necessarily more verified, which are not necessarily more authentic than Aadhaar, they would be accepted?
But
What is the
while
logic behind
I'm so
this?
sorry to interrupt you, but while we're talking, we have somebody in our audience saying, Prasad Duvuri, Barkha, both my adult children born in the US have Aadhaar cards legitimately. So this is the point that I was trying to make, that you can be a non-citizen who has an Aadhaar card. But I take your point. For me, more than the Aadhaar card, the larger debate should be voter ID cards. Voter ID cards have been given by the Election Commission themselves. Yes, you can argue that there's an updating exercise needed. People move out, people migrate, people, you may find out, as the Election Commission is arguing, that somebody has been registered in more than one constituency. I think the question before us is this, Yogendra ji. What is, you say a house to house enumeration may have been a better way forward. What would that house to house enumeration have been looking at? What would they have been going ghar se ghar and asking people?
It would have done exactly what the SIR press release says it has done. What has been achieved through the SIR, if what they are saying is true, is not based on anything to do with having enumeration forms or based on requirement of certificates, which no one has submitted so far anyway. It is
Hmm.
just based on careful look. So all that has happened in the case of SIR, fiction apart, the legal fiction apart, what has happened? Basically, a BLO, which is usually the school teacher, has
Hmm.
sat with the register of all the people in the village, has written down the names, in most cases, filled up the details himself, which he has, called them up to say, Arey, Aadhaar number aapka nahi hai, jara wo likhwa do, etc. Photographs are no longer required. So the BLO has used the existing information set to simply fill up things. And hopefully also checked ki kaun mar gaya hai, kaun ye hai. For this, you did not use the SIR. SIR
Hmm.
has two novel features, don't forget. Number one, making it mandatory for every citizen to fill a form and apply for registration, which has never happened in the country. And number two, making it mandatory to provide documents, which has never been asked. So far, in what has actually happened on the ground, both these things have been violated because people have not filled the form, BLOs have filled the forms, and once the Election Commission got panicky after the Supreme Court judgment, they said, "Kisi bhi tarah se bharo." You must have heard all those videos.
Hmm.
BLOs being shouted at, "छोड़ो, घरों में क्यों जा रहे हो? Time waste क्यों कर रहे हो? अपने घर में बैठो, बनाओ, शाम तक 500 form भेजो." This is what's happening on the ground. So, actually, no enumeration of forms has really taken place. And number two, as you know, practically 75-80% forms have been submitted without any documents whatsoever. And a majority of forms have been submitted without photographs as well. And if I dare say, at least a quarter of them have been submitted without signatures as well, on which the BLO has forced the signatures. This is the reality. Now tell me, what has it achieved? This would have, if they had gone house to house,
Hmm.
that people could have easily been ascertained by actually going house to house. So if the Election Commission wants to say, sorry, something we should have done 6 months ago, but we failed to do, sorry, we were bad at our job, but we are now doing a good job of it, that's all right, let them do it. Permanent migrant is a very difficult question, especially in a place like Bihar. But if they had, then this is something they could have done in December, January. All I'm saying is, in this country, Barkha, whether it came to demonetization or one nation, one election, the basic thing that we have forgotten is to match medicine with the disease. And this
Hmm.
country has a new passion. We first fall in love with the medicine. And then we start searching for a disease that the medicine would cure. So we fall in love with the medicine and we administer it. And then next day we start saying कि इससे ये वाली बीमारी ठीक हो जाएगी, अच्छा नहीं हुई, अच्छा ये जरूर हो जाएगी, अच्छा वो भी नहीं हुई ना, थर्ड हो जाएगी. This is the drama that was enacted during the demonetization, and the same drama is being enacted once again. Election Commission informally, through its sources, tells you that it will take care of illegal migrants. But
I was
I'm
just going to
told it
ask
does
you.
not.
I was just going to ask you exactly that question. That those who support the EC's intervention say that this is particularly sensitive for border states in Bengal, for example, states like Bengal, etc. There are big problems. We also did just check quickly the Aadhaar site, and indeed, foreign nationals can be eligible with certain conditions for the Aadhaar card. So, and those details are on the screen as we speak. The reason I'm bringing this up is those who support the Election Commission intervention would say, see, look at this. Non Indians can have Aadhaar cards. So, how can Yogendra Yadav argue that the Aadhaar should be accepted as a quote unquote standalone proof for voting? What would you say to that,
That is
Yogendra?
not my argument at all, but I think all I'm saying is non-Indians can also get
Agreed.
matriculation
I agree.
certification.
I agree. A
So,
document can be
so,
got. Yeah, okay.
so why? I'm not saying Aadhaar only. I'm saying if you have a list of 11, how is this 12th document different from those 11? That's my only question. And the simple answer to your basic query, Barkha, is in our country, other than passport, there is actually no such document that exists. It can be someone's case that therefore the country should now go on to do it. That's for Home Ministry to do. That's another thing altogether. But what
Hmm.
has been the answer? This is not a question you and I are facing for the first time in the last 75 years. This question was faced by Sukumar Sen in 1950 before the constitution came into being. And the answer that he gave, and the answer which has been taken by all election commissions, and the answer which has been reiterated in Supreme Court judgments, is that you use the presumption of citizenship in a country with such low saturation of documents, in a country with such conditions as prevail in Bihar. The only possible way of doing it in the electoral rolls is to use the presumption of citizenship. So if I step into a jhompadi in Supal districts of Bihar and I find two adult persons, I would presume them to be Indian citizen
Hmm.
unless I have specific information to doubt them, in which case I have every reason to ask them for documentation. I have every reason to make inquiries. I can make local inquiries. I can do all other things, which is all permissible under the law right now. You don't need an SIR for any such thing. Uh, that could be done. It's the presumption which is in a country like India. This is what works. And Barkha, you would know that all over the world, disenfranchisement has never been stated as disenfranchisement. What do people who do disenfranchisement say? You must have read Ashutosh Vashtay's article. The classic argument for disenfranchisement has been cleaning of electoral rolls. And the classic mechanism has been documentary requirement, knowing fully well which sections of society would fail to meet those documentary requirements. Raise the barrier of documentary requirement, and that is the sure short way of throwing the poor, the underprivileged, the less educated, and may I point out, Barkha, women. This particular provision is so anti-women. I thought you might wish to begin with that. And in two
Hmm.
ways. Please remember that, and I would really want you to highlight it because the SIR expects people to give certificates. The only certificate in this list of 11, which is very easily available, is matriculation if you have done it. That's one. That's one certificate which has the largest circulation. It's about 40 to 45% in the age group that we are looking at. But among women, it is 10 to 12 percentage point lower than, because in Bihar, matriculation, male female difference is stark. That's
Hmm.
one. And second, even worse, um, women are being asked to prove that their parents were on the electoral rolls. Now,
Hmm.
when the man is asked the same question, he has to find in the same village, he has to just find whether his parents were there in the same village in 2003 or not. What does it mean for a married woman? She has to go to her Maike and find out if her parents in the Maike's voter list, where the polling booth number would have changed in last two, since 2003, where even the constituency may have changed. She has to find it. I mean, is that not a way of disenfranchising people? What else is that? And I would have expected everyone, forget political boundaries, forget BJP, Congress, forget all these things. anyone who stands for genuine universal adult franchise and anyone who wants to give it without any distinction, discrimination, should stand up against that. It's very simple.
So we just pulled out this figure. Bihar has 11.87 lakh households with male graduates, and the number of households with female graduates is just a little over 3 lakhs. This is graduates, but it also shows you the disparity of the education access between men and women, which is the point that
In
you're
Bihar,
making,
it's
that
particularly stark. Yeah.
yeah, and that matriculation is lower among women than men. So the moment you go looking for the matriculation certificate, it's going to hurt women voters much more than male voters. And it is also important to say that the female voter has been so critical to the outcome of a series of recent elections. I want to ask you, in the end, the Supreme Court, of course, is now going to look at all of this and respond. But politically, Tejashwi Yadav gave a statement just a few hours ago, where he said that it is on the table to discuss for the opposition whether boycotting of polls is something that now should be discussed. I know that there is no perhaps unanimity, perhaps it's even a premature question, but since he has specifically said that this is something that could be discussed, I want your thoughts on it.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because, Barkha, you would remember as a political journalist, what was the difference between the two coalitions in Bihar last time in 2020? The difference between the winning and the losing coalition was 0.5%. What is 0.5% in uh, in a polling booth? 5 to 6 votes. A polling booth usually has about 1,000 voters. 0.5% is 5 or 6 votes. If you change 10 votes in a village, then you may actually end up changing the result of Bihar. And in this instance, Barkha, it doesn't take statistics or psephology for you to see that if this is applied, who are the people who would be excluded? And let us not be fooled by the numbers that the election commission is giving right now, because the real exercise begins after 1st of August, when the draft electoral rolls will be examined. And those who have not given any certificate may be asked to give those certificates, because the law has not changed, the rule has not changed. They've just been given a concession for a few days. So in Bihar, those who would be those who fear disenfranchisement would be mostly poor, uneducated migrants. And you don't have to be a psephologist to know who gets more votes among these communities. There is no doubt that BJP also gets their vote, JDU also gets the votes. But if all the, hypothetically, let's say, if we chop 10% of the bottom of Bihar away from the voters list, of them, I would imagine at least 6 would be RJD, CPI, ML, and Congress voters, and only 3 would have been BJP, JDU voters.
But
So
let me
finally,
just
who wins?
let me just push back a little bit on that claim, on that particular claim, where you basically are saying that it's the opposition voters who are more likely to get excluded from these lists. Nitish Kumar's own base has been extreme backward classes, right? There are extremely poor, marginalized communities that have voted traditionally for Nitish Kumar. So I do want to push back a little bit against your argument that this is only going to hurt the voters, primarily going to hurt the voters of the opposition.
Barkha, I actually had a look at the 2020 vote by class table and vote by education table. You can take a look at it. No, it cannot be anyone's claim that poor and uneducated people all en masse vote only for RJD, CPI, ML. That would be a
Yeah,
silly claim. It's
yeah,
all about differential. And please remember, in an election where the overall outcome was 0.5%, and suppose, as I said, we take the bottom 10% away, and let us say the difference was only 5 and 4. I reduce even further. I can give you the exact table. But let's say the difference was, of those 10, 5 voted for JDU, voted for the Mahagathbandhan, 4 voted for NDA, 1 vote went elsewhere. Even this is enough to tip the overall election of Bihar. And there is absolutely no doubt. Please consult any expert. Please call them and ask them to tell you voting patterns of Bihar, about among the poor, among the migrant, among the uneducated. What is the exact question that you should be asking is, what is the differential? What is the distance advantage that NDA enjoys in this section as opposed to the other section? And again, also look at that section, which has absolutely no threat, which would have all the documents that you require and more. In that section, NDA gets 8 out of 10 votes. So there you are. So why should you be surprised if Tejashwi says so? And in any case, in democracy, the basic premise is that the voters elect the government. The government doesn't elect the voters. And not to put too fine point on it, the SIR in reality on the ground could turn out to be an exercise where the incumbent government would have a discretionary arbitrary power to choose its voters. I'm not surprised that the opposition rejects it, because on such a fraudulent voters list, the kind of stories that we've heard, Barkha, which we have not discussed in the show today, of number of people who are saying, I never met the BLO never came to me, I tried to fill my form and realized it's already been filled. I mean, it's at least a quarter of Bihar's population is in that category where someone has filled the form for them. This is fraud. And if someone is saying, I do not want to contest election on a fraudulent list, well, you should say, yeah, that looks like it makes sense.
Well, I think given the Supreme Court's observations and comments in the last time this case was heard, I'd be very keen to see how they respond to the Election Commission's affidavit, and perhaps only then can we have a real political conversation about what the opposition might consider. Thank you, Yogendra Yadav. This is an important conversation, because no matter which side of this debate you're on, I think people have not fully appreciated that it's not about one state. It's not a technical issue about one state alone. This is a debate about, the right to vote. This is actually about that, and inclusion and not leaving anyone behind. And there can be two views on how you ensure that only those who are citizens vote. But these are very important questions that the Supreme Court will now have to give their final, I would say, interjection on before the election, or before before these lists are finalized. Thank you so much, Yogendra ji, and I'm sure we'll have another discussion once we have more details and responses from the Supreme Court. Thank you. Namaskar. Take care. Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Vote Her Story and support independent, robust journalism.